Hello everyone, in today's video I'll be reviewing Batman and Robin, the fourth and final film in the Burton-Schumacher Batman movies. After Batman Forever was a big mega hit at the box office, Joel Schumacher immediately worked on a sequel to Batman Forever. And boy, today I'm in for a very special treat, and boy, I'm really not looking forward to reviewing this piece of shit garbage today. But unfortunately, like all big movie fans and Batman followers and Batman comic book fans, gonna suck it up and review it anyway for you guys and girls. If there's a universe where Batman and Robin was never made, send me to that universe, because I'd rather be in that universe than reviewing this piece of shit garbage. Batman and Robin was directed once again by Joel Schumacher. It was produced by Peter McGregor Scott and was written by Octavia Goldman. The movie stars Arnold Schwarzenegger, George Clooney, Chris O'Donnell, Uma Thurman, Alicia Silverstone, Michael Gott, and Pat Hingle. The basic plot and storyline of Batman and Robin is basically Batman and Robin try to stop Mr. Freeze from freezing Gotham City and the world. Mr. Freeze teams up with Poison Ivy, a plant-loving lady. Batgirl joins Batman and Robin to stop them from taking over the world. Yeah, as you can tell, this plot and storyline is really like nothing crazy and interesting. It's basically like more of a straightforward storyline. Batman and Robin was released on June 20, 1997. The movie made $238.2 million at the box office. Okay, let me just say, right off the bat, this movie is flat out really bad. It sucks. It killed the franchise. It's an insult and a mockery of the character of Batman. This movie went from Tim Burton's gothic atmosphere to the campy, goofy comedy Adam West 60s TV show. This is also one of the worst movies I've ever seen in my life. The hardest part about this review is, what else is about this movie that has not been said and done already about on the internet about Batman and Robin? Basically, I'm going to try to do my best and honest opinion about why I don't like this movie at all, rather than trying to plagiarize or copy what's already been done already by other people on the internet. I guess the one that I want to point out, one of the reasons why this film is so bad, is George Clooney really sucks as Batman. It makes Val Kilmer's Batman a better performance. He's a little bit more lighthearted and laid back compared to Keenan Kilmer. Even George Clooney has admitted in interviews how this movie was bad, but surprisingly, this movie was a big jumpstart to his career as an actor. George Clooney is a great actor, but he really is not a good Batman at all whatsoever. Also, bat nipples, buttocks, and manhood, come on, why? Also, as Batman goes from hiding from the limelight from the last three movies to going to charity work at some auction. Val Kilmer dodged the bullet turning down this movie. Then again, the same was not any better. Plus, Joel Schumacher said he had a very hard time difficult working with Val Kilmer on Batman Forever. In the Val Kilmer documentary, the reason why he turned down a sequel to Batman because Val Kilmer said he did not see himself playing the same character over and over again. And he also said he did not see himself being a part of a franchise either. Another reason why Val Kilmer turned down Batman and Robin is he was too busy in working on The Saint, which was a remake to a 1960s British spy TV show with Roger Moore. He plays Simon Templar, a thief who steals from the rich and gives to the poor, a Robin Hood type story. The same movie was okay, but it was not any better than Batman and Robin, but then again, Val Kilmer dodged the bullet with this movie. In the words of Gene Siskel, this movie is just junk. It's an embarrassment and a wasted potential Batman movie that was just not necessary. You have all these good all-star actors who are just awful in this movie. The dialogue is cheesy, over-the-top, stupid, makes no sense, and it's very cartoony. The plot is not well written. It's hard to understand this mode of this movie. It's a complete embarrassment. Okay, I am not the nostalgia critic. I'm not going to copy and mimic his reaction to the back credit card. But I will say and point out, how is that no one is suspicious on how Batman can afford to buy Poison Ivy at an auction and that it could be Bruce Wayne? It's one of the few times in a Batman movie where the villains do not know that Bruce Wayne is Batman, unlike the last three Batman movies where the villains found out that Batman is Bruce Wayne. Arnold Schwarzenegger, Mr. Freeze, is just god awful and hard to watch. He's trying way too hard. He's only doing this for the paycheck. Also, all of his dialogue, Mr. Freeze, is really bad with stupid, cheesy one-liners and puns. A lot of the time it says, freeze, ice, cool party, chill, alright everyone, chill, chill. I read that Patrick Stewart was offered the role of Mr. Freeze. That could have been better, but then again, it probably would not have saved the movie from being better anyway. Because compared to Arnold Schwarzenegger and Patrick Stewart would have been more melodramatic, whereas Arnold's just playing the character like an action, cheesy, cartoony film. Also, Arnold Schwarzenegger forgot this is not the last action hero movie. Uma Thurman, whether people love her or not in this movie, she is just bad. She's over the top, cartoony, cheesy, and corny. They did the same premise cliche similar to how Catwoman was killed by her boss, and she comes back to life and kills her boss. The part when John Glover kills her really bad. I'm afraid you're going to have to die. Ah! It's so bad. So bad and funny, just so stupid and shit. The way she looks and talks, Uma Thurman forgot this was a Batman movie, not a porno movie. I'll help you grab your rocks. Heck, I am Mother Nature. Why not send Junior home early? I got some wild oats to show you. Oh my god. Who the heck wrote this movie? Who wrote this dialogue? What were they smoking? Did the actors or writers think for 5 minutes, does this sound pretty good? They really ruined Bane in this movie. The Bane in this movie is nothing like the comic books. In the comic books, Bane is one of Batman's smartest and most intelligent villains. In this movie, he's just like Poison Ivy's side henchman slash Igor assistant strawman bodyguard. The guy who played in Jeep Swanson was a really big dude, and sadly he passed away 25 years ago. I once watched behind the scene footage for the makeup artist for Bane. The makeup artist's response was, "We're gonna need a bigger boat." I guess the makeup artist had never seen such a big dude in his life. Crystal thought this movie is wrong and complains like a whiny little bitch in this movie. He whines as much as George Costanza. When him and Bruce Batman fight over against Poison Ivy because of the love spell, when Robin's about to go out and see Poison Ivy, Bruce says to Robin, "She wants to kill you, dick." He says it like he's calling Robin a dickhead. The opening line, "I want a car," and Batman looks at him like, "Are you serious?" And Robin's response is, "Chicks dig the car." Batman says back to him, "This is why Superman works alone." It makes you wonder, was this set in the same universe like the Richard Donner Superman movies? Because in the last movie, Batman Forever, Bruce Wayne does mention Metropolis. Maybe because of the time of the unmade Superman movie that was never made by Tim Burton, at that time we could have almost had a cinematic universe. I guess they were really fooling us to try to get our hopes up there was going to be a Batman versus Superman movie at that time. Alicia Silverstone as Batgirl really sucks, and is really bad in this movie. It's like she never read a Batman comic book or knew how to act like Batgirl. Unlike the Batman comic books where Barbara Gordon is Commissioner Gordon's daughter in this movie, she's Alfred's niece and has no British accent. One thing her and Crystal Dawn have in common is that this movie really destroyed their careers. And heck, both of them turned out big film projects and big movie-like roles that could have made them big stars. Alicia Silverstone was very big in the 90s from the coming-of-age teen flick comedy Clueless. That was her big breakout. After that, she turned out big roles that could have made her a star. I'll admit, I've never seen Clueless, and again, I'm not sexist, it just does not seem like my cup of tea, to be honest. Alicia Silverstone as Batgirl Barbara Gordon is just so, like, bland in this movie. She has, like, no personality in this character. Heck, even Chris O'Donnell turned down big movie roles. He turned down Men in Black and Titanic to do this movie instead. And boy, what a big mistake that was, turning down Titanic. But thankfully he's had a comeback and success with his CBS TV show NCIS Los Angeles with LL Cool J. This movie is so like boring, over the top. I can't even sit through this movie for the whole thing. I was on my phone bored, feeling tortured, wishing I'd be watching a better movie instead. Even though the movie is bad, it has some like funny over the top moments sometimes. It's the kind of movie it's so bad it's good kind of thing. This movie does not take itself seriously at all. With this movie not taking itself seriously, you have a subplot about Alfred where he is sick and dying in this movie. It's hard to take that seriously when you have so much bad cheesy dialogue in this film. They could have done a better story about Alfred dying in a better Batman movie, for sure. I'm gonna admit this, and I'm not gonna lie. As a kid growing up, being a huge die-hard Batman fan that I was, I did like this movie as a kid, but as a little kid, you think every movie is great. You're not as critical until you're an adult. Here's a little fact about me. The first time I saw this movie was in 1997. I was 4 years old, and I saw this movie at a drive-in movie theater with my family. And this is going to shock you. This is my first intro and first love for Batman. That's right, you heard me said it right. Batman and Robin was my first love and intro for Batman. But hey, we all have to start somewhere. Then after that, the rest is history for my love for Batman. After that, I saw the movies, I saw the cartoons, I read the comic books. In 1997, at 4 years old, what did I know? Nothing. I guess all I can say, though, is I was very fascinated being a Batman fan at that time. What's also funny is that they were also playing The Saint that night as a double feature. But unfortunately, me and my family left in the middle of that because the movie was bad. Looking back at that time, it did not occur to me that the new Batman, the old Batman, two different movies back to night were playing that night. And yes, I had the toys based on this movie. That's what the movie basically was, marketed as a kids for toys. Pretty much. Then again, they probably made more money selling the toys than the movie. Yogurt and Spaceballs was not lying about that, where the real money's made from the movie was from merchandising. I'll never forget in 2008, around the time when The Dark Knight was coming out, I was marathoning all the Batman movies for fun, and that's when it hit me and realized how bad this movie is. And this movie gets worse and bad for me every time as I watch as I get older, and it's not aged very well. It is aged poorly, this movie. After the failure of this movie, Warner Bros. Originally wanted Joel Schumacher to direct another Batman movie called Batman Triumphant. But because of the failure of Batman and Robin, the movie was cancelled. Now, from what I've read about the original idea for this movie that was never made, the Scarecrow was going to be the main villain, where he puts fear toxin in Batman as recurring nightmares on feeling guilty for killing the Joker. Also, Harley Quinn was going to be in this movie. Jeff Goldblum, Nicolas Cage, Brad Dourif, or Howard Stern were considered for the role of Scarecrow. I don't mind Howard Stern, but he does not strike me as a guy to play the Scarecrow. Now, the other three could have been good Scarecrows, yes. What's really surprising to say, from what I've read about this movie that was never made, it sounded like it could have been an okay, decent movie. But because the movie was never made, we will never know how this movie could have turned out. But because the movie was never made, we will never know how this movie could have turned out. Looking back around this time period, this movie came out in the late 90s. I feel like comic book movies back in the 90s were like hit or miss. This movie came out the same year as Steel, Tank Girl, and Spawn. They really were not taking comic books seriously around this time period, thinking that comic books were just for kids. Then, thankfully, a year later, 1998, Blade with Wesley Snipes really set the tone and was the start to reinventing the comic book films. What's also amazing is that because the character Blade was not a very well-known comic book character, They did not think that it would not work until the movie came out. It worked out very well, especially how much I love the Blade movie from 1998 with Wesley Snipes. It also sounded like Joel Schumacher could have almost made his version of a dark Batman movie that he really wanted to make. My advice is just, instead of watching this piece of shit garbage, watch the 90s animated TV show. That show did a much better, fantastic job and did real justice for Mr. Freeze and Poison Ivy. The episodes I recommend are Heart of Ice, one of my all-time favorite Mr. Freeze episodes. There's another episode, Deep Freeze. That one is okay and good, but it's nowhere as good as Heart of Ice. Also, watch the animated Sub-Zero. That was basically a response to Batman and Robin at the time, a year later. For Poison Ivy, I recommend Pretty Poison, Eternal Youth, House of Garden, and Harley and Ivy. I hope that someday that in another Batman film they will reuse the Mr. Freeze character, because that character has like so much potential. That is such a great Batman villain that people realize and give it credit for. I hope that someday they will use Mr. Freeze again in another Batman movie, but done way better than what we got in this movie. The character has so much potential in a Batman movie to be done very well. Mr. Freeze is a sad, tragic character that people realize and don't give enough credit for. Heart of Ice from the animated series proves that. So that was my review of Batman and Robin. Like the video, subscribe, hit that notification bell to get the latest updates on my YouTube channel. And stay tuned for the Christopher Nolan Dark Knight trilogy.